Welcome to Milan Recording Studios. My name is James Pavel Chakras, and in today's video, on the table today, we have the Yamaha Reface CP, which has been a much anticipated product. A lot of you guys have been wanting me to do a review on this and the other Reface models. I chose the Reface CP because it's the one that's most interesting to me as a piano-based instrument, and so that's the one we're going to be taking a look at today. We're going to be looking at all of its cool features and all the things it can do, and we're going to be seeing if it's cool or not. I really want to like this. I think it's a really cool idea, but we'll see just how well executed it is. Before we get into that, though, before I open this up and show it to you in all of its little tiny glory, what I'm going to be doing is a little bit of a shameless self-promotion here for my second channel, Milan Recording Studios. On that channel, I do a lot of videos where I feature musical performances, both from myself and other musicians. And the one that I'm going to be releasing today is one that you're not going to want to miss. The performer in this video is Chu-Shen Lee, and he will be performing the first movement of Beethoven's Waldstein Sonata, which is one of Beethoven's most difficult pieces ever written for piano, and Chu-Shen plays it amazingly. And it's people like Chu-Shen, who is a student at East Tennessee State University, who really make me want to stay with it and continue to learn the piano at ETSU and to continue to improve myself, because he is an incredible performer and I loved listening to his performance, and the faculty and staff at ETSU are also really incredible. And although East Tennessee State University is not super well known for music at the moment, I think they are well down the right track to become perhaps one of the best music schools in the United States. Certainly among the best. I think they're well on the right track. So definitely go check out Chu-Shen Lee playing the first movement of Beethoven's Waldstein Sonata. That will be in the description of the video. And now let's return to the Yamaha Reface. What I'm going to do is open this up off camera and get it out of its package and mess around with it for a little bit, and then I'll come back to you guys and I will tell you what I think, and we'll run through all the different sounds and all of its features. It doesn't have that many, so we're going to be able to test it out to its full extent. This is going to be fun. Let's check it out. So here is the Yamaha Reface CP out of the package, and as you can see, it is tiny and it is adorable, but although it is tiny, and although it is adorable, to me it actually almost still has a kind of a professional kind of an appearance to it. It looks legit. I really like the aesthetic of it. You've got the satin plastic look with the shiny metallic actual metal up here for the speaker grills and the back plate for all of the knobs. Although the construction of this instrument is mostly plastic with the exception of this metal plate, it actually still has a nice firm quality heavy feel to it, and I think the build quality here is excellent. I don't think you're gonna have any issues really at all with this. All of the knobs feel nice. You've got these really nice sliders for the volume and for the octave shift, and then all the other knobs are very big and very easy to use, easy to reach, and I think the aesthetic of it is really nice. Now, what does the Reface do? Why am I reviewing it? And how is it different from these little toy pianos I've been reviewing as of late? Well, as you can see, the Reface has a similar form factor and size to these toy pianos that I've been reviewing, like the Yamaha PSS F30 and the A50, but the main difference here is that the Reface CP has more professional sounds, and it has less of them. It actually only has 6 different sounds, but these 6 sounds are all much higher quality than you would find in, say, for example, the PSS F30, and that should be because this is a more expensive instrument. You also have a pedal input, which is another huge difference between this and the toy pianos I've been reviewing. This does not come with a sustain pedal, which is a bit unfortunate. The little foot switches Yamaha includes with the P125 and such would easily fit in the box, and although those aren't the best, they do the job. That's what I'm using here in today's video. But the fact that it does have a sustained pedal port is awesome. It also has its own dedicated power plug, unlike the F30 and the A50, which simply just used a USB cable. Now I think it's time to move in closer and get some sound demos of this thing. So here's a closer look at the Reface CP, and what I'm going to do is just run through the controls and show you what they do, and then we will play the instrument and hear how it sounds. On the left here we have your volume slider. That does exactly what you think it does. It has a really nice feel. When I first started moving it, it was a little gritty, but that's worked itself out and it feels really nice and smooth now. The switch to the right of it is an octave slider, so the center position is an octave, and it has these little set points that it snaps to for different octaves. So you have actually quite quite a wide octave range. Although the instrument itself is only 3 octaves, you have a much wider range that is almost the same as a full piano. To access it, though, you just have to use this switch, which can be used to great effect in pieces of music. The knob here to the right of the octave switch is your type knob. So basically this selects the different type of sound. And as you can see, there's only 6. You have one type of Rhodes, a second variation of Rhodes, a Wurlitzer, a clavinet, a toy piano of all things, and a CP, a Yamaha CP. So those are the only sounds you get, and that might be a turnoff for some people that, oh, there's only 6 sounds. But the sounds that are in here are actually pretty nice, certainly when compared to the other small mini pianos of the size that Yamaha makes. The ones in here are very on par with what you might find in a CP88 or even a P515. I almost feel like the Wurlitzer sound in this is better than in any other Yamaha that I have tried so far, but that could just be me. To the right of this here, we have the drive knob, which essentially is kind of like an amp simulator. The higher up you turn it, the more distorted and gritty the sound will be. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I personally think it sounds pretty good. And for this default Rhodes sound, I've turned it up just a little bit to make the sound be a touch brighter. These knobs over here they may initially look complicated, but they're actually really simple. Each switch here has 3 different positions. You've got the top switch, which in this case is for the tremolo, the middle switch, which is off, and the bottom switch, which on this section controls your wah. And then these 2 knobs are your depth. This one on the left is your depth, and the one on your right is your rate. And that's the same for this category, and for this category, and in a sense, for this category as well, but it's a little different. So it's really easy to use. These switches have a very nice feel. I believe these are just ported right over from the CP88. I think it has very similar switches on it. My only complaint with these is that they are very easy to switch, and on occasion, when I'm turning these knobs, I can sometimes accidentally switch off the switch. Not a huge deal, but I would perhaps like a little more of a firm click feel. And that's the same goes for this as well. It's not quite as snappy as I would have thought, but those are the really only complaints I have with the user interface, which is not a big deal at all. The second section over here, the top switch is your chorus and the bottom switch is your phaser. Once again, these knobs control the depth and the rate. And for over here, you have a digital delay and an analog delay, both of which do the same sort of thing, but have a different type of sound, and we'll play with that later on in the video. The final knob on the right is your reverb, and this is your reverb. The higher up you turn the knob, the more reverb you'll get. It's not the greatest reverb sound, but it definitely does do the job, and for certain things, it is excellent. It's not going to be a spacey, ethereal reverb that has a hang time of 15 seconds at its maximum setting like some keyboards I found have, but it definitely does do the job, and you won't really need that anyway, so that's okay. On the back, we have, like I said, a few different ports. You've got your direct line outs, you've got a sustain jack, you've got a headphone jack, and things of that nature. On the left, you've got a MIDI and I believe also a USB port, as well as a proper power cable. The way I am recording this instrument is by using both of the stereo line outs, which are going into our recording and our recording interface, and I'm also using the headphone jack to output to an amplifier just so I myself can hear it, because I couldn't hear it otherwise without headphones. And that's about it. I've also got a sustain pedal plugged in, like I said earlier, and that is one of the huge differences between the CP and the PSS A50 or the F30. Because the PSS A30 or A50 or F30 could never do anything quite like this. As you can hear, the pedal really brings that to life and actually makes it sound very good. I was also using a touch of chorus, a little bit of reverb, and a touch of the drive, which I don't even know if that was doing anything, but I decided to do that anyways. So the Reface CP is capable of making beautiful, professional-sounding music in a little tiny form factor, and I love that about it. I think that's really, really sweet. Obviously, it's not going to have the same quality of sounds as you'd find in the P515, but these are more on par with the P515 than they are with, say, the PSS 850. Now, the Rhodes sound in here, the default one, isn't the greatest. The mid-range is really good, in my opinion, for a digital piano. The second lowest octave setting, not the lowest, but the one above that, actually is its sweet spot, in my opinion. The treble sounds good, little short on sustain, but that particular setting sounds really nice. I'm going to switch off the effects and just play a little bit of a few chords on it just to give you a taste of how it sounds. Like I said, I think that's the sweet spot for it. If we go down to the lower octave, I think the lowest bass notes don't really sound that hot. Have a listen. They're okay, but I've heard better. And if we take a look at the two highest octaves, they sound pretty good, but I feel like the highest octave especially may be lacking a bit of sustain. On a real Rhodes, that register is very, very punchy and very bright, but on this, not so much. There is no EQ, unfortunately, either in this, so you're not able to pump up the treble if you really need it to punch. I don't know how many people would actually need one of these for performing live, but it would be capable of doing it. You do have the proper line outs, you do have quality sounds that people aren't going to laugh at you for using, so an EQ would be a little helpful. They could have put it here or here. That would have been cool, because I feel like perhaps EQing that treble and making it just a shade brighter and more punchy would be useful in a live setting. So I think now it's time to take a look at some of these effects, just briefly listen to the sounds of them. I'm going to use the default Rhodes for that and just go run through all of them, and we'll hear them more in some of the other sounds, but I'm just going to test out all of them with the default Rhodes sound as a constant, because it sounds pretty good. So the first one we're going to listen to here is the tremolo, which is for the Rhodes sound is an auto pan. It's a very nice one as well. I think it sounds excellent. I'm going to crank this up to right about here, and I'll mess with the settings as I play some chords so you can hear the extreme ranges of this. That's something else I like about the CP, is the maximum you can turn these knobs is ridiculous. So you have a wide amount of control with the sound. It's not like a tiny bit. You can go from being completely off to turbo speed. It's pretty cool. Have a listen. So that's the sound of the tremolo, and as you can hear, you can do ridiculous things with it. The highest setting on it is almost non-musical, but I like that. I like that we have that degree of control. You can have it anywhere from being off to being absolutely ridiculous, and then anywhere in between, and I think that's a lot better than having it be from completely off to a still musical context, because then you don't have as much freedom in between. I think that's a really good decision. Like I said, the middle position here is off, so if you're using the tremolo and you want to immediately turn it off, just flip that switch in mid-performance if you want to, and it will turn the tremolo off. Another small gripe I have with the CP, I don't know how big of a gripe it is, but it's a small thing I noticed, is that when you're playing and you switch the effects on and off, there's a pause and a delay. It's not seamless, so that's a little unfortunate. Let me turn this back up a bit and demo that for you here. I assume the reason for this is because the switch is flipping through the off position to get to the other side. Even if you switch it fast, you'll see the light doesn't turn off. If I do it slow, you'll see the light turns off for a second. Even if I do it fast and the light doesn't turn off, I'm assuming the keyboard still says, hey, it's off for a second. And so for some reason, it cuts the sound. Not sure why. That's not a huge issue, but it's just something I've noticed that I thought would be cool if it was fixed. Now, the wah isn't my favorite. I think the Korg SV2 has a better wah, a built-in wah sound, but again, that's a lot more expensive, so of course it would. But the built-in wah on the CP is pretty fun. I think it works best maybe with the clavinet and also with the Rhodes if you slap some drive on it and then put the wah. It gets pretty crazy. But I'll just play with this a little bit, and like again, I'll tweak the controls around and let you hear the extreme ranges of the wah. So that's the wah of the CP. Again, not my favorite. I'm not a huge fan of the sounds it makes, but it's there, and for certain things, it might be cool. There might be certain sound settings in it that just make it really pop and sing, but I'm not a massive fan of the wah. I don't think it's terrible, but like I said, not my favorite. If we move on to the chorus setting, though, I'm actually a big fan of the chorus setting on the Reface CP. Did I call it a CP88 a second ago? I meant the Reface CP. The chorus is actually really lovely, especially with that Rhodes sound. We heard it earlier in the beginning with my treble test piece, but I'm just going to mess around with it again, play with the extremities, and see exactly what it can do. So like the tremolo, it is capable of doing some weird, wacky noises, but when you put it in a normal setting, right about in the middle, I find that that kind of a positioning right there is a beautiful sound. Let me demo that for you. The Reface CP can really make some beautiful stuff. Now, the other category here is the phasers. That's the other effect within this category. I'm not really a huge fan of phasers, so as a result, I don't really care for their phaser in the CP just because I don't like phasers that much as a whole. But that's not to say the phaser in here is bad. I don't think it's bad. I just don't really care for the sound of phasers, but I'll give it a fair treatment and play with it just like I have with everything else. So there you have it, the phaser on the Reface CP, and in the final category is where things really get fun. So this is the digital delay and the analog delay, and you can do some really crazy things with these. So obviously they're a delay, so basically they'll just repeat the sound that you play, and you can use these normally as an extension of the reverb, kind of in a sense. That's how I usually use the delay. I'll put a slight delay on something and some reverb, which kind of the two complement each other, but you can do some really weird noises and tweak it on the fly and do some crazy stuff. So for those of you who like noisy, weird music, this you'll like this. So it was doing some weird stuff there all on its own. I wouldn't really use that much. I wouldn't really find a use for that. But it is entertaining. I will give it that. I think it's very entertaining. And for people who like to use delay and can use it to great effect, I think you guys might like that. The analog delay does a similar thing, although even crazier. So let's take a listen to this. So you can get some weird, crazy effects with the digital and analog delay effects on the Reface CP, but by far my two favorites are the tremolo and the chorus. Those, I think, are the most musical, the most beautiful, and the most usable. The final effect here, which is also very musical, beautiful, and usable, is the reverb, which I'll be playing around with a lot in the video because there's some sounds in here that really come alive with it. Just like the others, I'll use the default Rhodes, and I'll play with the extremes of the reverb and let you guys see how it sounds. Reverb is a pretty simple thing, and there's not really a whole lot to it. There's only one type. It would have been cool if you could push this in and you'd get a series of different types of reverb that would simulate a different sort of room. Or even over here, if you could push this in and access a second rank of sounds, you'd have 12 instead of just 6. Or push this in and get different types of drive of various different effects and grittinesses. That would have been kind of cool, but it would have made the Reface CP a little more complicated, and part of its beauty is its simplicity. Let's move on now finally to a new sound. I'm not going to run through all the effects of this sound as well. They all do the same thing. They don't change with each sound. I just wanted to run through all of the effects with one sound so you guys could hear the effects and pay a little bit less attention to that default Rhodes. Although I said the default Rhodes isn't that great, like the bass end's not too hot, that mid-range and treble really is beautiful. The reverb and the chorus really make it come alive. The second Rhodes sound, which I think is a little weaker, it's a bit brighter, but you might actually find that to be useful for a live performance setting. Let's check it out. So that's the second Rhodes sound there. I don't like it as much as the first Rhodes sound, which is to me the sound of a Rhodes, but the second Rhodes sound is actually still quite nice and very musical and usable. The next sound here that I really, really love is the Wurlitzer sound. I think Yamaha did a great job on. I almost feel like it might even be better than the ones they've used in the CP88 and the P515. I'm not sure on that, but to me it sounds really nice. Let's put some tremolo on it, because that's what the Whirly would have originally had. Let's do it like that. I'll tweak it as I go along. We'll slap a little bit of reverb on it, and let's have some fun. That sounds great to me. That is a lot of fun. The tremolo sounds almost authentic. The reverb definitely adds some to it as well. And the tone of the Wurlitzer alone is really, really nice. If you add some drive to it as well, you get it to be a little bit more punchy and bright and brilliant. So let's play with that just a tiny bit, and then we'll move on to the next sound. As you can hear, I just don't want to stop playing it. That Whirly sound is a lot of fun. You could also add the chorus in. That was historically used a lot with the Whirly. But I think I'll move on to the clavinet sound. In my opinion, the clavinet sound on the Reface CP is just lacking something. I'm not sure what. I did have the drive up. Let me try that again. Turn off the drive and see if that makes it sound a little better. Let's try it again. Yeah, that sounds a little bit more like a clavinet that I expected, but it still, I think, lacks something. I'm not sure what. It sounds okay. It sounds like a clavinet. It just doesn't have that punchy spirit you'd expect from a clavinet, that bright, gritty sound. And as you could hear, the drive did not make it sound better. I've played around with this a little bit off camera, and I found the wah doesn't really help the clavinet all that much. Let's play with that a bit. Actually, I feel like off camera I might have been using the wrong settings, because that actually sounded pretty good to me. I think that actually did help the clavinet. I feel like I just probably was using the depth, and the rate was probably too off. I know if you turn the depth to the left, it makes it sound muffled and weird, but actually, you know what? I take back my previous statement. The wah does help the clavinet. You could also put a chorus or phaser or a delay, and maybe even some reverb on it too. Let's put a little bit of reverb and play a little bit more with the clavinet with the wah sound. The next to last sound here on the Reface CP is, of all things, a toy piano. And when I was watching videos of this before mine came in the mail, and I was looking at videos of it, I saw a lot of YouTube comments saying, why a toy piano of all things, Yamaha? Why not a Celesta? And part of me does agree. I think a Celesta would have been a bit of a better option, but the idea for this is vintage pianos, and actually in the owner's manual, Yamaha says that these types of toy pianos, and I'm sure you'll recognize this sound, I've actually got one sitting on the floor back here, I'm gonna shoot a video on it later. These toy pianos were actually used a lot as for children during the 70s. So someone who grew up in the 70s with one of these toy pianos would probably remember the sound from their childhood and maybe like it. So I think that is part of the reason why Yamaha included this toy piano. Fun fact, Shonha, the company that's most famous for making those toy pianos, has been making them since the late 1800s. So they weren't just popular in the 70s. But here's that sound of the toy piano. I'm just going to play a few notes. There's not really too much you can do with it musically, but this is one of the better sounding samples of one I've heard. Let's take a listen. The toy piano, we all know that sound. Now, I accidentally had it in the wrong octave, and that kind of spoiled something I wanted to chuck at you guys just out of nowhere. The toy piano by itself is kind of weird, but if you shift it down 2 octaves, put max reverb on it, and put some chorus on it, you get a really interesting sound. Have a listen to this. Yeah, it sounds like church bells. Really weird church bells. Not the greatest imitation of them, but actually one of the best imitations of church bells I've ever heard on a piano comes from a toy piano sound on the Reface CP. So that, I think, is really interesting, and I genuinely like using that. Will I ever use it in music? Probably not. But I think it's kind of cool. I think it sounds really interesting and creepy and ethereal and weird, and I like it. I think it's cool. And maybe that's the reason Yamaha put the toy piano in here, is so people would do that with it. I don't know. You can do lots of weird things with this Reface CP. Like I said, the effects, you max out all the effects. That might be something I should do. Max out all the effects and just see what weirdness happens. Maybe we'll do that at the end. But you can do some weird, crazy things with the Reface CP. And that, I think, is another part of its beauty, is that although it's simple, you got 6 sounds, 6 different effects, 7 plus the reverb, 8 plus the drive, so 6 sounds, 8 effects. You'd think there's nothing you could do with it, but actually it's a little more versatile than you'd expect. The final sound here is a CP, the famous Yamaha CP80 from the past, and again, not one of my favorite piano sounds of all time, but certain keyboards can really pull it off well, and certain keyboards can make it sound really good. Let's pop a little bit of reverb. We'll maybe put a phaser on it. I said I didn't like phaser, but we'll put a slight, subtle phaser on it, and see if that sounds good. Let's check it out. So the CP is another solid sounding sound on the CP Reface, and it sounds pretty good as well. That is just about everything the Reface CP can do. It is a simple keyboard. Another small, tiny little complaint I have with the user interface is that this knob has a stop right here. You can't just flip it once more to go to the Rode sound. Not sure why, but it's not a big deal to flip it the other way. It's not a massive issue. But overall, I hope you guys liked the Reface CP video. I am a big fan of this thing. I think although it is limited, the small keys can hinder you. You don't have a big range. The portability and the kind of unique factor about it is really, really fun. I think it's just a fun instrument to play. Would it be good for learning the piano on? No. I feel like if you're looking for an instrument to learn the piano on and you're already looking at something that's around $300 US, you might just pay a little more and get a P125 or a P45 even. That would be a lot more suitable for learning the piano. You could learn the note names on this, but beyond that, the technique used to play this, as you may have seen in the video, is unorthodox. You don't play this like a normal piano. And that's part of the reason I was unsure about this. The action of this I thought might lead to issues, but because we're using Rhodes and Wurlitzers and clavinets and toy pianos that you can mutate into church bells, you don't need the fine dynamic control that you do on a piano. So an instrument like the A50 that has piano sounds in it, you can't really get a consistent dynamic response out of it. That's not an issue with this because an original Rhodes didn't handle like a piano either. So the fact that some of the notes are punchy and loud and bright really isn't an issue. It actually feels great. I love playing the Reface CP, and I think it is actually really, really fun. So now the moment that I teased about earlier towards the end of the video, I'm going to do it now. What happens if I max out all the effects and play the instrument? So what I'm going to do here is start off with the default Fender Rhodes sound. We're going to take the drive, turn that all the way up. We're going to turn the tremolo and the depth and the rate up. Use the tremolo effect. The depth and the rate for the chorus will be up. The depth and time of the delay will be up. And the reverb can go all the way up to maximum. Now what happens when I press a note? Let's take a listen. That sounds like some kind of an alarm system, like something's dying. Oh no, the oxygen in the spaceship has been cut. That alarm will sound. That was really funny. And that is kind of the extent to the ridiculousness that the Yamaha Reface CP can do. It's actually really fun. It's really cool. Now, what happens if we do the other way around? Let's do the wah at its maximum, the phaser at its maximum, the analog delay at its maximum, and we'll leave the reverb at its maximum. What happens here? Let's take a listen. So the Reface CP is capable of some crazy, ridiculous, hilarious things, and that is kind of what I like about it. That's what makes it special, that's what makes it unique. No other tiny keyboard, other than the other Refaces, would be able to do something similar. And would you ever use those noises in music? Probably not. Maybe that alarm sound one, you might be able to use that somehow. But most of those noises, probably not. But the fact that it can do that is one of the reasons that I like the Reface CP. So that has been a review of the Yamaha Reface CP, and overall, although it does have its limitations with the smaller keybed and a somewhat lack of features, it is fun to play. Although it can't do as much as a more expensive instrument, the things that it can do, in my opinion, it can do quite well. And I think the small, tiny form factor, but the high quality size combined make this a very fun instrument to play. Overall, I think it's really, really cool. I'm very happy with it. I think it looks great. I think it sounds cool for the price. And overall, I am very happy with it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video of the Reface CP. It did turn out to be as cool as I had hoped. I was worried about it. I thought the action might be a major detriment to it, and although it's certainly not as refined as an actual weighted action would be, it is still fun to play. I'm curious if it is possible to make a shrunken down version of a weighted action, like take the full size mechanism and just make everything smaller so that you can have keys of this size but still have the weighted mechanism that you'd have in, say, a P125. Is that possible? Could that have been done? If so, that might have made this a little bit better, but it also would have probably been a little more boxy and ugly because it would have had to be thicker to accommodate the mechanism for the weighted keys. That would be something cool that maybe Yamaha should look into if they haven't already. I'm sure they probably have, and it doesn't work for a number of different reasons, but that would be a cool idea if it does work. Overall, though, I adore the CP. I think it's really cool, the Reface CP. I think it's neat, and hopefully you guys liked it as well. If you did, you might want to go check out my channel. I have lots of cool videos of small digital pianos, big digital pianos, and acoustic pianos as well. That's what my channel was founded on, so I've got all sorts of stuff. If any of that sounds cool, you might want to think about subscribing, and if you do subscribe, don't forget to go check out Milan Recording Studios and check out that awesome video I told you guys about at the beginning of the video. If you do all that, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.